Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we are going through the naughty and nice list for the holidays for Disney. So who's getting presents? Who's getting coal? That's the big question.
It is a good question.
So we're going to go through all that as we get close to the end of the year here. Obviously, it's checking Santa's list. It's a very important thing. And the Santa Claus is Disney.
Yeah,
so somehow this all kind of ties in. No season 3. I think I'm putting that on the naughty list. This is the first year in a couple years we've not gotten a season of the Santa Clauses. I'm all into the Santa Claus extended universe, the lore behind it, everything. So the fact that we did not get a season 3 this year, putting that on the naughty list automatically.
I think that's a good move there.
All right, so let's get into some of the other actual naughty and nice list stuff here, besides just the Santa Claus. So
do we want to start with the naughty list?
We want to start with the naughty list since I've already put season 3 of the Santa Claus on there.
Yeah, I like to, I want to end with the positive.
Okay.
Let's end with the positive. Right. So we'll start with the negative. So I think that for me, the naughty list is part of some of the fallout from D23.
Okay.
So for me, that is getting rid of Dinosaur in Animal Kingdom and replacing that with Indiana Jones, which I still struggle to understand why, if anyone wants that, because it's already over in Disneyland and it's a great ride. Let them have it.
It's going to be a different story. It's not an exact
It
replica
isn't, but I don't
see
it being as grand as over in Disneyland because they have that 2-story showroom. And so if you can't do it just as well, I just don't think that there's a point in them taking the ride that is different and making it Indiana Jones. I think that they could have chosen something else. We could have been in Antonio's bedroom and been
that's going to be Encanto.
Yeah, but I'm saying just an idea. Like we could have been in Antonio's bedroom and some animal gets out. Like if kind of.
But that's what they're doing with Encanto. They're building that.
But what I'm saying is, if you have to change it, it's not like I'm super attached to Dinosaur. Although I love that ride and I think it's so like kitschy and silly. I just think that. Indiana Jones to me does not feel like the fit.
They probably could have just gone all in and just done all Encanto.
Yeah, I agree. Like 100%.
Yeah, just have 2 Encanto attractions.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that would have been better, or done Zootopia, or said, you know what, let's just go with what we have, but let's plus it. Let's make it better. Let's improve the dinosaurs, which I think is really what they should have done, because I think it's a unique and fun ride. And even though it's rooted in IP, it's rooted in the movie Dinosaur, which I don't think many people really I don't want to say they don't connect with it anymore, but it's just not one of the more popular Disney films that people associate with Disney. I understand that they think they don't want that anymore, but I don't know. There's just something about that ride, and I love the fact that it is different on both coasts, and so to me that was a bad move.
You mean Dinosaur and Indiana Jones?
Yeah, I love that they are not. They are
because there's no dinosaur.
They're a similar ride system. It's basically the same ride. It's just that they are different rides because the theming is different, and I love that about it.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a point that they're different on both coasts. I mean, they're different rides. I mean, Disney uses the same ride system on a lot of attractions, and we don't call them the same ride. That's true. So I think that connection, they are very, very similar, though. I think that's kind of why they get called kind of the same ride. But
now they're taking it and making it literally the same theming.
Now they are,
even.
Now they are basically. They're basically admitting, hey, it's basically the same ride.
Yeah.
And now, it 100% is going to be the same. So.
Right. And so then the other part of that announcement, I mean, the dinosaur part is the part that I'm more upset about, but I know a lot of people are upset about this next part of the announcement, which was putting cars in Magic Kingdom. I don't really see the fit. I'm not particularly attached to like the Rivers of America and the Mark Twain riverboat, which I know there are a lot of people who are like diehards. I actually wrote an Instagram post about that this morning, and how Walt had a big respect for Mark Twain, and like that's his again another like throwback to Walt that they're getting rid of.
It's the whole atmosphere of it too. It's just like going back to Walt of like it's a theme park where you should feel like you're transported somewhere, and it's a place in time, that area. And so now getting rid of that takes away that place in time, and you're kind of forcing IP into an area. It's taking away the atmosphere, and now Frontierland again isn't really the frontier. Again, it's not that place in time. It's kind of like, okay, why are there talking cars here? Like, that never happened. Sure, that cars were part of an expansion out west, but talking cars weren't. Like, I think that's kind of where it's coming from.
And I think for me, and I didn't even realize it until you just said it, is I feel like one of the things I love so very much about Disneyland as a whole is that it is different than Walt Disney World. I mean, they are by and large the same park in many respects, but I like the nuances. So the fact that they're bringing cars over to the East Coast, I'm like, no, that's a West Coast thing. Let them have that. Let that be their thing. I don't want it over here because, again, like, maybe that's selfish, and there are people who can't experience cars because they can't go over to the West Coast. So I understand that perspective
but
too.
Now Disneyland will be the only one with the riverboat. And the Rivers of America, and Disney World won't have it.
But right next to the Haunted Mansion too. Like, I think that is actually my issue with it, is that, like, imagining like having the Haunted Mansion and then like that waterway being there. Like, imagine that, and then they're gonna have to do something to visually separate.
Well, they will, and I think what the ultimate goal is, Haunted Mansion becomes the gateway to Villains Land, and so basically Liberty Square kind of goes away, and Haunted Mansion gets absorbed into Villains, and so visually that will kind of tie in, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I think those are my, like, that D23 Fallout is part of, like, my one of my naughty lists.
Yeah,
things.
So I'm putting Lucasfilm on the naughty list this year. I feel like they have no clue what they're doing over there. Now Skeleton Crew is coming out, so hey, maybe that kind of turns it around, but I don't think that's going to change their fortunes. But, like, they canceled The Acolyte after one season. I thought it was good. It was definitely building to future seasons. Now, I think, it obviously got mixed reviews. I'm not sure how well the viewership actually was. I think the viewership started okay. I don't know that it finished as strong. It picked up. Like, the first few episodes obviously weren't that great. It picked up at the end. But I think even with that, of like how it started off slow, I think is just another point in they're struggling what they're doing. Like, why are they making shows about The Mandalorian and Ahsoka that take place hundreds of years in the future, and then now all of a sudden now we're making a show about The Acolyte that takes place before even the prequel trilogy? And so I think part of their problem is they're kind of just greenlighting all sorts of stuff. Like, they're apparently making a movie about the High Republic that's even older than The Acolyte, but then they're also making new movies about Rey and a new sequel that's taking place after the Disney trilogy. And I think that's where, like, it becomes difficult. Like, they're trying to be Marvel, but Marvel stories at least all take place in the same timeline. Like, you kind of have a group of movies that kind of make sense. And I think it's hard when you're bouncing around in timelines to get people to stay invested in the characters. Because if you're invested in Mando and Grogu and Ahsoka, and now you're watching about something else, you're like, now I have to learn who this person is, and it doesn't tie into anything else. And it does. It just seems like, to a certain extent, they have no clue what's going on. Movies get announced, movies get canceled, movies get announced.
They're throwing spaghetti
at
the wall
and it's just
a little
seeing
bit.
what sticks. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Kind of just revisiting The Acolyte for a second. I think that show had some of the best fight sequences of any of the Lucas properties. Period. End stop. Like, when you get to those end episodes and there are some lightsaber battles, and you're like, this makes the original series. I mean, I think it's kind of been a joke about the originals, 4, 5, 6, like their lightsaber fights were not good.
I mean, and their lightsabers were so heavy, like just the technology of what they use for the special effects got easier. And so that kind of allowed them to do more stuff. I also think that the original ones, I mean, I think George Lucas initially wanted it to feel heavy, to feel like it was forced. Then in the prequels, he kind of did go
then
like
they can
more.
whip them around.
Yeah, they went more acrobatic and stuff like that. But you're right. Like, it was a good show. There was a lot to it.
And then we get the, like, Darth Plagueis at the end. Like, it leaves you with something that you're, like, really looking forward to. And I was looking forward to seeing the development of the characters that we learned to care about. Like, I did care about the characters. I cared about Osha, and I cared about May, and the fact that it seemed like now they were switching allegiances, where one was going to become good and one was going to become bad. Like, I loved that idea. And so I'm frustrated because we put in that time and kind of, I don't want to say suffered through the beginning where it seemed a little aimless, but it got there. And then there's no payoff with the second season where they can actually really go somewhere with it.
Yeah. And again, I think part of the problem is, though, the one right before that was Ahsoka. And that kind of left off on a cliffhanger that's building to they're in another galaxy. They're in another world. What does this mean? What's going to happen next here? And it's kind of like, okay, I want to see what's happening there. Now I'm getting thrown back hundreds of years in the past, and I have to build. And again, I think the bouncing around struggles. I also think the fact that these seasons are getting canceled, you're going to give, I mean, this happens on Netflix. Like Netflix, when they start canceling shows after a season or two, you kind of start this expectation now of people of, I'm not even going to watch this show because why get invested after in one season if it's going to get canceled, which then hurts viewership, which then causes these shows to get canceled more often than if you gave them a couple seasons. And so like you start this
chaos.
Like you start this doom loop of things of like, well, the next Star Wars show that comes out, why should I bother watching it until I know there's going to be a season 2 or a season 3? Because what's the point of getting invested in one season? So Lucasfilm is struggling a bit, so they're on the naughty list for me.
The next thing on the naughty list for me is live action movies. I think that they're getting out of hand. There's too much. I've talked about this in the past where it's like you are taking and regurgitating the same ideas, only worse than you had originally. So, like, for example, I know you and I have talked about this. Moana. Why do we need a live action Moana when Moana came out in 2016?
The movie makes no sense to me, and they're actively filming it. I thought for sure this was going to be one that kind of just disappeared, especially seeing how good Moana 2 has done in the theaters. But they're moving forward with it. I don't know why.
So I think that what they don't care that they're doing is they're ripping the beating hearts out of these movies. So like Moana, one of the areas that Moana shines is the colors and like the vibrancy of everything in the animation is gorgeous. Like it is absolutely beautiful. And not to say that Hawaii isn't beautiful and they can't make that look good. It is not going to touch the beauty of the animation and what the animators were able to do with the ocean and making everything look so realistic, but also so beautifully brilliant. So that takes it out. And then for me, the other thing, now this is a new property, but still they're doing live action with it, is Mufasa. I think they so missed the mark because they should have animated it.
You
and
want
I
to see
understand,
like classic animation.
I don't even like it doesn't even have to be like, the hand-drawn stuff. I would be fine with them
but just
doing
animated like how they do Frozen.
If they
Moana,
had animated it, because again, you're ripping the beating heart out of what it could be. Because if you go back shot for shot and you compare the original Lion King with the new version, the live action one, it's Simba's face expressions. Those are the things that sell the emotion of the scenes and make him like you are taking a story about humans essentially, and you're anthropomorphizing it and making animals go through it instead of a human. So the animals having human facial expressions makes it very relatable, and of course again the bright colors makes it pretty. So then when you take that, like I saw somebody the other day on like Instagram, they had a side by side of Simba after Mufasa died and like the animation of Simba's face after Mufasa died was just so like powerful, and then it's just like the live action is just like he's just like making a straight face because again it's a lion, it's not going to emote like a human can. So I think that is a massive miss on the part of Mufasa. I think that it would be so much better had they done it differently.
Yeah, no, we haven't seen Mufasa yet.
No,
I will say I'm a little bit more okay with the live action of Mufasa because it's not a remake.
Yeah, it's not a remake.
At least an original story. It does seem from the trailers that the animals maybe do have a little bit more emotion to it. Like they're maybe it seems a little bit more exaggerated in some of the stuff that they're doing, especially like with the other lions that they're fighting and stuff. But I think Mufasa may do well because they got Lin-Manuel Miranda
to do the music,
writing the music for it. I think music impacts these movies so much. Talking about Moana 2, it's doing really well at the box office. I think we both felt not as strong as Moana 1, but I think the biggest thing for me was it's a very similar story to Moana 1. Don't want to talk too much spoilers here, but in terms of kind of just like overarching story beats, like there's something she has to go do. It's out in the ocean. She's with Maui. She accomplishes what she has to do and comes home.
That's boiling it down a lot.
Right. But the songs in the first one were so much more powerful in driving the story and connecting. And I feel like the songs in the second one just didn't connect in the same way. And I also think it struggled a little bit because it was a TV show that they kind of chopped down into a movie. But I think the songs are really what makes it. And I think Lin-Manuel is going to have good songs. Another thing I want to say about live action, all that being said, I kind of agree with for the most part. But the Lilo and Stitch looks great. What they're doing with Stitch looks great. And I think that's where
I think this one's called for.
Yes.
I think this one, and actually the Snow White one, I know a lot of people see like they have issues with that. I think that it is very old, and if you try to watch Snow White, I don't connect with it because I feel like it does feel very old, and you have to remind yourself like this movie was revolutionary for its time. So I see a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, I think Snow White's good. I think Lilo and Stitch is good because I think that's the route Disney should take, because Lilo and Stitch was not a super popular movie.
Nope.
I think all of those movies in that time frame, Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear,
Treasure Island,
not
Treasure Island, Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet.
Yeah, Treasure Planet.
Like make all of those live action, because there is a kind of like cult following fan base in a lot of those movies, but they never reached.
Don't do live action Brother Bear.
They
please.
never reached.
Please.
They never reached like a super high popularity, and so you're not comparing, because that's the problem with the live action with Aladdin, with Beauty and the Beast. You're always comparing it to
a movie that was massively popular.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to one up that. But a movie that not a lot of people know about, like I've never seen Lilo and Stitch. I know who Stitch is. I know who the characters are, but I've never seen that movie. So I'm not going to be comparing it to the original. And I think Stitch looks good in it. So I think that's kind of the way to go. So my last one on the naughty list here is Deadpool. Now, Deadpool, he saved the MCU for sure. I think he turned around the fortunes of Marvel going forward. Massive box office success. I think helped turn around Disney's fortunes at the box office as well. So you're like, Joe, why is he on the naughty list? Like, that sounds like he's all doing pretty good. I'm with you, but we all know Deadpool wants to be on the naughty list, not the nice list. So even though he did a great job saving the MCU, phenomenal movie, again, I think really helped them course correct, and I think got people excited now about all of the future phases leading up into Secret Wars. I think people are excited about Fantastic Four, everything coming out. But Deadpool wants to be on the naughty list, so I'm putting him on the naughty list.
Yeah, he's actually on my nice list, but you are right. He would prefer to be on the naughty list. But I do think that movie was delightful when I watched it the first time.
I love that. It was
delightful.
That's a great quote. You know how they have like all like fascinating, amazing, delightful.
Delightful, yeah. I will say I watched part of it like recently, and I wasn't as enthralled the second time around. I think it's like there is a certain like shock and awe value to it, and then once you've seen it already, you're like, oh yeah, this is coming. I mean, not to say that it wasn't enjoyable,
you have
but
to
it
wait
wasn't
a little
delightful.
bit. Yeah, like we rewatched the Deadpool movies before Deadpool and Wolverine, and it had been 4 or 5 years. So like, you don't remember all the jokes.
Yeah,
and so it's funny to watch them again. But yeah, I feel like if you watched it very close together, you could be like, yeah, you know what's coming. It doesn't hit as funny. So
yeah. So my last thing on the naughty list is Disney in general.
Just all of Disney.
Disney animation.
Disney
not
animation.
animation.
Okay.
It's not. I don't want to put it on the animators. It is Disney because
the Disney
movies,
animation studio.
Yeah,
like the studio. Yeah.
Yeah, like they are not putting out bangers right now. The last two movies that they've had, Moana and Wish, I think were both massive.
Moana 2. You're talking Moana 2
I'm
here.
sorry. Yes,
Moana
because
2.
I love Moana, and I don't want to even put Moana and Moana 2 in the same breath because they're massively different movies. So I wasn't a big fan of Wish. I thought that it was kind of half-baked. It felt like it could be good, but they didn't quite take enough time with it. I felt like they had the seed of a good idea, and I felt the very same way about Moana 2, where it felt very unfinished to me, and it was one of the few Disney films where I could not immerse myself in it, and that is a problem because I was crying at the Disney logo coming up before the movie. I teared up because I was so excited. And I mean, I understand that that's part of the problem, is that I was so excited for this movie and I had high hopes. And it's interesting because I read the D23 article about it, and it basically
you bought into the hype machine 100%.
Hook, line, and sinker, because they made it sound like they got quotes, and they probably were like, "Hey, if you like your job."
D23 magazine got positive quotes from Disney.
Yeah, they were like, "Hey, if you like your job, you're gonna say that you came to all the Disney execs and were like, yo, this is bigger. This needs to be on the big screen." Because there is no way I believe that those people went forward and said, "Hey, you know what I want you to do? I want you to hack up my story, take all these characters we spent a lot of time developing, and then make them half-baked and you sort of care about them." I mean, like, it's just, to me, like, whenever I can go through an entire Disney movie without crying, that's a problem. Like Coco, not my favorite Disney movie by far. I cried like a baby.
Yeah, like, Moana 2 didn't have that.
It wasn't immersive.
It didn't have that emotional punch to it, and I do think it did suffer from. It was a not TV, but it was a streaming series, and it sounded like, and all the articles do talk about that it was a very last minute change to make this a full length feature film. I have to imagine it was because another movie they were working on wasn't ready for Thanksgiving, because Disney loves to have a movie out for Thanksgiving. I mean, that's a huge market. And Moana 2 is doing well. From a box office perspective, it's doing well. And I will say, too.
Which, unfortunately, I'm sorry, that is unfortunate. Like, that is very unfortunate because it's not teaching them a lesson.
Yeah. I will say this, though. To a certain extent, these movies aren't made for us. They're made for younger generations. And so the younger generations are enjoying it. I understand you might not enjoy it, and you like the movies to be made more for you. But like, I get, hey, I didn't love the movie, but I know it's not made for me, so that's okay. But I it definitely did suffer from, I feel like this series pretty much done, because I think a lot of what weighed it down is there were too many characters on there that they had no time to explain why they were there or why we should care about them. Like, there was a couple songs to try to introduce you to all of them and make you care about them to a certain extent, but there wasn't enough time. And I think if they would have decided earlier this is going to be a movie, not a series,
they would have axed a few of the characters.
Those characters would have been gone. I think the fact that this was all done, they had to have the characters because it was probably basically all animated. And I think that's what struggles. I think from a Disney perspective, I think they made the right move. I think from what we got as fans, yes, it was obviously not the right move, because I think we could have gotten a better final product if they would have just said earlier, let's make it a true sequel. And it's weird that they even decided to make a series anyways. It's their number one movie on streaming. They know they have an audience, and maybe that's why they did it. Again, this was maybe from a pre-Iger era where they were like, we need to get more people on streaming. Everybody loves Moana, so let's give them a Moana series.
Well, they said they were working for 4 years on this, is what I read.
Yeah, so this was in Chapek's, kind of era. But I think now it's like, hey, let's try to make money, and they obviously made money theatrically on this. So.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's frustrating because, again, like, I view this Disney company as a steward. Like, they are steward. Like, they create these characters, and then they have like a stewardship of them where they are helping like represent them and carry on their legacy. And I felt like they did Moana a dirty one, because I just don't think she was as punchy, as relatable. Her whole reason for her journey didn't feel compelling. Like, her island was going to die if they didn't connect with other people. Like, that was very murky.
They didn't say when. Like, they didn't say when it was going to die. They said it was going to die.
The storyline just was not shored up. And again, like,
it wasn't imminent. Disney, it wasn't an imminent threat.
Yes, Disney always has like this big, like, they do a good job of having these people solve these giant problems. And to me, her giant problem didn't seem like much of a problem. It was more like a want, not a need.
It definitely was a series problem.
Yes, absolutely.
Not a movie.
I think if it was a series problem, I would have completely bought it.
Right. And I think the story would have been further built out. I think the positive with how well Moana 2 is doing is we are going to get a Moana 3. And it's going to be a movie greenlit. They're not going to go, hey, we need to make this a series. They're going to go, Moana is box office gold. Yeah. Let's develop this as a true movie. Maybe Lin-Manuel Miranda comes back.
I hope.
Because obviously he wasn't involved because it was going to be a series. He was doing the music for Mufasa instead.
Yeah.
I think the music suffered a little bit. But they're going to put a lot of money into the third one. And you have to look at trilogies. Often in trilogies, the second movie
falls off,
is a dip. And then the third movie brings it back. So the first one's always great. The second one dips. The third one comes back. So I think that's the one positive is we're going to get another Moana movie. We have to. And it's going to be a dedicated theatrical movie so they can have a good story, a compelling story, make something work that I think, to your point, redeems it. And then you kind of forget about the second one. You just go, hey, first one was great. Third one was great. It's kind of like Thor.
That's what I've heard about the Cars franchise as well. I've been told
it's kind of like the Thor franchise.
Yeah.
Thor 2 wasn't good.
Yeah,
and the Thor 3 completely turned around. Now Thor's like the best character in the world. If it would have ended after 2, you'd been like, I don't know about Thor. Yeah. But yeah, Cars is another one. Another series I haven't seen. I gotta watch the Cars movies. You've talked so poorly about it.
Well, no. I have a friend, Nicole from Star Cruiser, that like really likes the Cars franchise, and I've kind of gone back and forth with her about it. She's like, I can't believe you don't like Cars. But it was also, for me, I was in high school, and I think that I felt like I could not like a movie about cars. I don't know what about it that there was about it that maybe I think that I will like it when I watch it again. But she did say,
wait till
beware.
I watch this. Wait till I watch
She said,
this.
beware of the second movie. Like, we love the Cars franchise, and it's even crazy.
Wait till I watch this, and it's like, I love it. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing Pixar's ever done. So. All right, so moving on to my nice list, which I find funny because the first thing I have here was basically your naughty list. So you said D23 was Disney on the naughty list. I got Josh D'Amaro on the nice list. I think Josh brought the heat at D23. Now, you might not have liked what he had to announce and what he announced is going to get replaced and that sort of thing. And I think, you know what, at D23, he did a really nice job of like not telling you
anything that's going
to
be replaced.
By the way, this is all actually going to replace Muppets, Courtyard, The Rivers of America, all that sort of stuff. He just played it cool. He was like
all good news all the time.
He was all hype, but he brought it. I mean, the last D23, they announced nothing. They've had nothing for years. Everybody was like, what are you doing? Josh D'Amaro came to play this D23. He had been on the naughty list for years. He's gotten coal for Christmas the past couple of years. He turned it around, got himself on the nice list. And I think Disney, like, I feel like there is momentum at Disney now in that they are putting money into the parks. They are putting money into the company, the box office turnaround, all that sort of stuff that the narrative on Disney is changing. Now, yes, they are replacing some things that maybe we wouldn't like them to replace, getting rid of some things, etc. But it seems like they are making progress now, whereas I feel like they have kind of been stationary for too long.
Well, and this kind of goes back to like our interview with Bob Weiss, where he said that Imagineering kind of goes in like ebbs and flows. And so we are now getting into like that new age of Imagineering where they're getting to run with a lot of those fun ideas and get to create new things. And
they're just putting money. I mean, yeah. this $60 billion that they're planning to spend. I mean, I thought, hey, we'd be lucky to get a couple things, or that's, over the next decade. I mean, it seems like they are, knocking out of the park. And this is all Walt Disney World. We still don't know about Disneyland Forward. They really haven't announced a lot of details on that Avatar land over there, what they're doing there. We're getting more cruise ships. Like, they seem to be rolling. And Disney and, all pop culture companies and I feel like public companies that are in a, the public eye, so much of it is just, what do people perceive you as? And I feel like the past few years, Disney has been perceived as they don't have a handle on streaming. They can't make good movies anymore. The theme parks are falling apart. People aren't going. Epic Universe is coming. Like, Universal's going to take over. And it was just negative publicity after negative publicity. And even whether it's true or not true, it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, if people don't think you're going to do good, the investing community turns on you, everything, that sort of thing. And I feel like within a year, they've turned the narrative around that it is now like Disney's on top again and kind of they're firing on all cylinders. The parks are making a ton of money, streaming's turning around, all that sort of stuff. And again, whether that much has changed from a year ago or not, it's just the people's perception of it is, and I think that helps so much that the positivity is going to help them drive forward and actually see a lot of this stuff to fruition. Whereas, before they could have announced stuff, you're like, who knows if this is ever actually going to get built? Like, it seems like they're actually starting construction on some of this stuff. Maybe not all of it. I think some of it maybe still falls off because you never want to bet on 100% of it happening. But it seems like a lot of it is going to actually happen.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of hit on one of my nice lists. So I did say the fallout from D23. That's why I said fallout.
Okay.
But D23 in general was on the nice list. And I think there's a couple things here, like a couple nuggets to really look forward to. So I think that, first of all, redoing, and this wasn't really announced, this is actually part of the fallout too, redoing the Rock and Roller Coaster generally I think is a good thing. I think that it isn't a ride that I don't think is like necessarily beloved. Aerosmith's not very massively popular like they were. And putting the Muppets on it, I think, does make it fun. I do anticipate they are also going to do some amount of what they did with Mission Breakout or even Cosmic Rewind. They both have a similar idea where there's like a playlist and you get a song from a playlist. I imagine they're going to do something similar to this where it creates like a rewriteability factor with it, and like it changes every time, and I think that's one way that they can drive some people over that direction. Again, like there are of course things you can say like, oh, they should have not taken existing places, they should have built out on land, but overall, like, I think that's a good thing, and I think that the Monsters Incorporated door roller coaster is a fantastic idea. I think it's a really fun idea. I think it's going to be a blast. It's sad where it's going to end up having to go, but I think that overall that ride is going to be a really fantastic ride. But the thing that has me the most excited is Villains Land, which is very, very, I feel like, far away, but I think there's a lot of potential for this to be a lot of fun. I think that, I think they announced it in Brazil that they were going to have the Chernobog. Like, I could see like a giant animatronic of the Chernobog, like looming over the land. Like, I think that there's a lot of really fun space that they can play in here. I hope that they don't miss some opportunities, like for my my Elephant Graveyard roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I mean, you actually pitched that to Bob Weiss a few weeks ago, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually working on it. He doesn't work for Imagineering anymore, but I'm sure he still has contacts.
I know, I was just like, hopefully he has contacts, and
you
texts them and like, hey.
You said you don't want credit. You're like, I just want it built.
I just want it built.
It's a free idea.
I just want it to be reality. This is all I want. He did tell me there is still hope.
Yeah.
But I think that there's just a lot they can do with Villains Land. I think there's a lot of fun things. I hope they capitalize on some of the really great villains that they have.
Yeah.
Like
there's a real positivity in the air, I feel like, around Disney. Again, just recently.
Right. And I mean, even like we've said this before, but even like Cruella de Vil, like over in Disneyland, she's one of the best character meet and greets. So I just look forward to what they can bring over to the Magic Kingdom, because I think that specific, like the interactions that you can create with those villains, if done, like they're going to do it well, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
So I also have on the nice list Disney's return to box office gold. It's already mentioned Deadpool and Wolverine doing well, turning around for Marvel there. Pixar, you had Inside Out 2. I think that was close to $1.6 billion in a worldwide box office. We've already talked about Moana 2. Maybe not the best movie, but from a box office perspective, it's doing very well. Thanksgiving weekend alone, that 5 days over Thanksgiving when it opened, $220 million just at the domestic box office. The first Moana in total domestically did $240 million. So it basically almost eclipsed it in 5 days. So again, this kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier, just where the perception of Disney has immediately flipped, where before it was they're slipping at the box office, they aren't doing as well. After a few years of dominating the box office, because you had things like Avengers Endgame and Avatar and Star Wars and like all these movies just doing well. Avatar 2 came out, I think it was the end of last year. That again did billions of dollars. So like now it is, hey, Disney is coming out with these hit movies. Again, as fans, it's a lot of sequels. Maybe they aren't the quality or the story that we would have wanted as fans, but they are doing well at the box office, and that's kind of the first step you need. You need to change the people's perception and change it on, hey, when Pixar comes out with a movie, you got to go see it at the box office. Don't wait for it to come out on streaming, because the better these movies do at the box office, the more freedom it gives Disney and Pixar to try original stories out, to kind of try different things, because if these movies that should be hits aren't doing well, they're definitely not going to try original movies. So I think the fact that now these are doing well, perception is turning. People see Pixar as, hey, you got to go see these Pixar movies. You got to go see these Disney movies. They can now try new things. They got a little less pressure on them. And they've really, I feel like, turned their fortunes around here. So that's why putting them on the nice list. Disney box office getting a very nice present this year.
Yeah, a buttload of cash.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need to give them anything else.
Yeah,
they did it okay themselves.
They backed up the entire what is it?
The money truck.
Disney Adventure. What's the name of the giant ship that they just
Yeah, the Adventure.
The Adventure, yeah. They filled that entire ship with money.
They did.
And then it's just dumping out on them right now.
Yep.
Yeah. So interestingly, you mentioned my last thing on the nice list just now, and that's Pixar. I think Pixar has done a good job within, especially the past couple years, of creating good movies. So I think that Inside Out 2 was really fun. I thought it was a really interesting movie. I think that they did a good job of taking the original movie and then expanding it. Like we get the the dream studio where Riley has her dreams, and you get to see like the production of it. I think that was a really good way of taking that and just, again, like plussing it and making it more, but still having a really cohesive story. And then if you think, I know this isn't this year, but last year you had Elemental, which I think is in fact, I think it is the best Pixar movie for me ever. I think it ranks up there with some of my favorite Disney movies. I think it's just a really beautiful story, and I think that it's a really repeatable movie. It's fun. It's interesting visually. I just think it was so beautiful. So I think that Disney needs to go over to Pixar, knock on the door, knock, 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 and say, hey, Pixar, can you help us with story? Because I think that they are doing such an excellent job that Disney needs to kind of look to them and look to, maybe reorient themselves with the Pixar process, because I think that they could learn from it. I do think that, your little spiel just now did give me a little bit more hope, that because I was thinking,
that's what I'm all about, bringing hope and cheer this holiday
season.
Because
I think like them succeeding with Moana is a bad thing, because I think it shows them, Moana 2, it shows them that creating, like half-baked movies with proven IP is a successful thing to do, which is what makes me afraid, because I think that that's sort of what has happened with the live action remakes, as they've seen, oh, this is an easy way for us to make money. But you are right in that if they are having success, success can beget success, and they can have a little bit more room to play, versus saying like, well, we have to do what is safe because we know that's what's going to hopefully bring in the money. So you made me feel a little better at the end of this episode, about...
That's good, because we don't want anybody being sad this holiday season.
No, absolutely
we want happiness.
Not. Yeah, we want happiness. So I hope that all of you guys would be on... I think you all would be on our nice list. What do you think, Joe?
I think everybody is on our nice list, and we'd love to hear from our listeners. Who would you put at Disney on your naughty and nice list? If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments below, or you can let us know on Instagram. We're at Enchanted Ears Podcast over there. But that wraps up the show for this week. I want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.